How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin, and how do you develop the mindset and skill set to be successful? Welcome, everyone, to the Sprint to Success with Design Thinking podcast. I'm your host, Saba Kidwai. Join me each week as I share the stories and strategies from the world's leading researchers and practitioners about why they believe the answer lies in practicing design thinking. What is happening? Where is it happening? And why is it happening? These are the questions that today's guest believes are absolutely essential to ask when thinking about how we tell stories and how we make sense of not just change, but all of the data and information that we have in front of us today. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my favorite people that I met in Finland, Dr. Tomi. He's a professor of information visualization and cognitive systems at Aalto University, and he holds a PhD in media technology. Now, I personally had never heard the term information visualization before. I had definitely heard the term media literacy, and obviously I had heard people and, being at the forefront of sort of having discussions about how we become literate in a world where we are sort of bombarded with so many different types of media and data and information. However, I've never really heard anyone as eloquent and articulate as Tomi. And so when we have these really intense conversations today about how to prepare people to navigate a world with an overwhelming amount of data, how you distinguish fact from fiction, and how you just really ensure that you're a critical consumer of information, Tomi just had an absolute gift for being able to really almost simplify how to move forward, how to give people the skills and strategies to actually be critical consumers and really be able to not be overwhelmed by data, but instead really be in control of the information that is coming at them. So I first met Tomi while visiting Aalto University in Helsinki. Now, he's going to talk more about Aalto, but they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary of merging together the three major Finnish universities. The goal behind this was really to try to create a more multidisciplinary environment where they could really help their students foster innovation and creativity and just prepare them for the world that they were about to enter. Like last week's guest, Matthew, Tomi also is both a professor and a practitioner at the intersection of design, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. He's also the coordinator for Aalto Online Learning, a strategic development project at Aalto University. He's also the co-host of a podcast called Cloud Reachers, and he is regularly invited to deliver keynotes across the world. And so I really could not be more honored to have him here today with all of us. I'm so excited to hear what you guys think about the conversation and the incredible ideas that Tomi's about to share. So don't forget to tag us online, let us know what you're thinking, what you enjoyed, and what questions you still have. So here we go, everyone. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tomi Koponen. Hi, Tomi, and welcome. I really enjoyed my visit to the Design Factory at Aalto University, and what I actually really enjoyed more was just your enthusiasm around the presentation of your ideas and your work. So I would love if we could start by just sort of sharing the story of Aalto and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, big thanks for visiting us. So, because it's all about people. We believe in working with people, collaboration, communication, that's the key. And of course, it's not in the university boundaries, right? Within the university boundaries. So it's very nice to exchange thoughts with the, other people, especially, enthusiastic people like you and all your group of students. So if I tell about Aalto Online Learning or Aalto?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I would love for people to learn about Aalto and sort of just the vision that the university has.
Yeah, exactly. So we are quite young university. It's 9 years old, basically. We will have a 10 years anniversary January 8th next year. We are now, preparing it. I'm also part of the planning, organizing a committee for it. Why is it a new university? Well, there was time like 11, 12 years ago when these three universities, one business university, then technical university, and then arts and design university, they decided to merge. There was government was very much pushing for it and asking them to merge, and then they said that, okay, well, if you merge, we will double your budget. So it's why was this merger even happening? Well, because of great success stories, when you combine design and technology and business together, some things might happen, right? Something interesting might happen, and we now start seeing that some things actually happen. So it's very interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary university, I would say. If you look at my information visualization course, I have students from business, I have students from arts, actually more and more from arts, also from science, different engineering fields. So it actually works.
No, and that's great. And I want to dig in a little bit more to how the government supported you a little bit later on. But I'd love to also have you kind of share your specific role at Aalto and what you're doing there.
Yeah. Okay. So my background is in media technology. So I did my PhD in media technology, and also I'm a docent, which doesn't mean anything abroad, but it's kind of professorship without the professorship. Right, okay. So it's kind of it's a qualification for teaching. It's a right to teach. It's a right to do research.
Okay, and is that something specific to Finland?
It's a Finland thing. It's also you see it in Germany, Privatdocent, and also Norwegian countries, Sweden, Norway. Okay. So it's kind of European thingy. Okay. I think the roots are from Germany, I would guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So so that's one thing, and I'm using my docentship to teach and do research. But then also I'm leading Aalto Online Learning, which is the strategic initiative started 2016 to create online learning experiences throughout the university. Yeah. So it's rather big investment by the university, to bring us to the top.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And what are some of the things that you mean when you say bring us to the top? Like, why is the government so invested in creating this environment at the university?
Yeah, well, Nokia. Nokia has. It was literally the biggest mobile phone company in the world.
Right.
And it was very much a kind of example that other companies was also kind of following. So when you combine design, business, and technology together, then things might happen. So the government really wanted that there will be small Nokias coming up.
Oh, okay.
When we educate people, also another big motivation was to educate game changers. So as we see societies and the environment is changing so rapidly, we need to both change the way businesses are operating and what kind of products should be put out there. More sustainable thinking, creative thinking. It's also new kind of skills that you need, more collaborative, kind of bringing different disciplines together. And why not start it right from the studies?
Right, absolutely.
So, yeah.
So what are some...
yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, what are some of the things that you see, like, what is that like for your students? Are they used to those kinds of environments? Like, what are some of the things you're seeing happen there?
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic. For a teacher, but also for a student. I remember when I was studying computer science at the University of Helsinki, and I thought it was so kind of boring. It was kind of easy and boring. So then I started to study film theory and photography, philosophy, all other sorts of things, business as well. And then that led me to work at the companies. And now if I look at our own students, I think they get kind of this more easily. So they don't, I mean, they get kind of all these opportunities right in the same university, in the same curricula. So, so they seem to be enjoying. Of course, I mean, it's always if you face different kind of people, I mean, it's it's also creating tension. It's also creating misunderstandings and misconceptions about how things should go on. So it's more and more questions. I would say this kind of system is raising in the heads of students. That's why we have to be also, I think, more and more empathical, and also understand kind of. I mean, not introduce competitive cultures too much, but collaborative cultures.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big shift for the world today is to move away from being competitive towards more
Yeah.
collaborative. And so,
Yeah.
and that's a great opportunity for your students. And so I want to, you shared a little bit about your background with computer science and the film and the arts. And I know information visualization is a huge passion of yours
Yeah.
and really a research interest more. Tell us a little bit, what is information visualization?
Yeah, so information visualization is a way to communicate something about the world. So if you look at data, what is data really? It's observations. Think about it. I mean, it's observations by some person, observations by some organization, I mean, group of people, or some technical sensors. There is something, whatever it is, that is observing the world. It's observing the environment. It's observing how organizations are doing, how we are going around in the social media. I mean, that's
Right.
observation. So all this data is out there. It's so much data. It's increasing so rapidly. And yet, how do we understand what is going on? How do we make sense of all this data? First of all, how do we bring it to the information level where it's, as usable as it can be? I mean, so that we can actually use that information. And I believe that information visualization is a way to find out interesting stories in this information, and then we can either remember better what has happened, or we can decide what to do, or we can even learn something. And I think these three are really different things. I mean, sometimes you remember something, but you didn't really learn anything.
Right.
Just, or you use the information to make fast decisions. For example, like book a hotel, but you don't really,
Right.
even remember or learn anything. You just make the decision. Information helps you to make the decision. And I think the key there is storytelling, I would say. And how did I get interested in it? When I was a child, I was reading a lot of books. We had a huge library, and I was also running small film clubs, also at the university, a big film club. And I was taking film theory classes and history of film classes. We had a photography studio at home as well. So actually, black in dark room. So we were developing photos with my brother. So all of this is kind of combining together. And then also, of course, I was doing multimedia for 5 years in companies. So it's, all of this is kind of coming together in the information visualization course and research. I mean, it's really my passion.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting how you have all of these interests, over time, and they kind of merge together and become a profession. And I think that is a goal for so many people. Tell us a little bit more about the relationship between storytelling and information visualization.
Yeah, so if you look at how best stories are built, so there are a few things. So first of all, everything happens in some space and time, right? And then what is this everything? It's about something, right? So there's some theme, some topic. So what I'm teaching in the course and also what I really believe in it, we should always try to look, okay, what is happening, where it is happening, and when is it happening. So when we look at data, information that we want to visualize, kind of trying to find what is the place there. Not just space, but what is the place, something that makes sense, something that has a meaning. And then also, when does it happen? And then what is happening, what is going on, right? And with place, I mean like really trying to find some meaningful places, not like looking at some specific coordinate. I mean, that doesn't tell anything, right? What is the bigger region? Is this story about this house? So something is happening in this house, right? So lights are going on, or whatever is the observation. And then also when. I mean, if you're talking about microseconds, perhaps that is not, interesting. But like, in the morning, in the house, lights went on, right? So this is the observation we have. And then we can look at this data and make a story, like when something's happened in this house over time. And then, of course, you can start bringing characters there as well. Like, okay, well, lights went on. There must be a person there. I mean, there must be somebody living there. So let's look at the different interesting patterns. So this guy seems to, or his family seems to wake up every day at around 8 o'clock, right? So you start creating these story elements to, convey basically what is going on, what is happening. And this is what you can do very powerfully with animations, with something happening over time, and explain what is going on, basically, what is going on in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting, because storytelling has always been such an important part. It's really been a part of human history from the beginning of
Yeah,
time. And
absolutely.
it's interesting to see, like, though the ways in which we can tell stories, though, has evolved so much and become
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
more advanced, but also probably a lot more necessary. Not just, and I think a lot of
yeah,
people think storytelling is only just for marketing, or brands or
yeah,
companies. Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit more about why it's important for individuals, for students, really for everybody to be able to master?
Yeah, well, first of all, there are stories around. So, the stories are a way for us to make sense of what is going on anyways without data as well. Think about it. You go out, then you see something interesting happening, and then you like, okay, why is this car going around there? Right, okay, it's the repair company ordered by my neighbor. She was talking about it the other day, right? So you create a story about it. You see something happening in the world, so you create a story. The thing is that that nowadays, we are creating a story ourselves, but it's also others are creating stories. They are creating narratives. Politicians, companies. Advertising for advertising. It's so many stories. So I think we should be really, really talented in creating stories and also interpreting these stories, and also interpreting the kind of the motivation for different stories that are around, in order to make sense of what is really going on, and also make more informed decisions ourselves. Because otherwise, we are basically manipulated.
No, absolutely. And I want to go a little bit deeper with you on that, because it's probably one of the best ways I've ever heard anybody speak about critical thinking. We know today that we have an information literacy problem. We know
Yeah,
today that
yeah,
we have a fake news problem. It's one of the biggest challenges of our time. And I love that you make this association between the importance of people creating stories so that you can be able to understand really how those
yeah,
stories are
yeah,
put together and
yeah,
how they're being told. Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about the relationship between critical thinking and storytelling?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. We did in the space session, the places and spaces session 2 weeks ago. I asked students to look at different viral maps. So maps that are around, right? Somebody has created a map and then showing like, hey, look at these states, for example, in the US, they voted like this, right? with colors and communicating basically a story of what happened. And then all the students gathered a lot of super interesting examples. Then we were looking at them and looking at, okay, what is the story here? What do we understand kind of immediately? And then, of course, we were analyzing, is this story real? Is it really something? You see, like first of all, looking at like, okay, what is this story there? And then critically analyzing this story. Does it really make sense? Is there some data? What are these observations that this visualization is based on? First of all, are these observations real? I mean, did somebody really have these observations, this data? And even if yes, then how colors were used to perhaps, kind of exaggerate some things.
Okay, yeah.
Right. To make this story more powerful. Because the both the power and problem with visualization is that people believe in them. Because think about fireside chat.
Right.
Our history. You talk about history, right? So history is. It's essentially how we understand, anyways, about what is going on. It's based on the long tradition of these fireside chats, right? So we have a fire going on, then people tell a story about like what they did observe today, or they went for a trip and then they came back and then they share a story. So it's all about storytelling. Now the big question is, can we? Which stories are fictional?
Right.
Which stories are something that we should use for our decision making, or learn something from, or even just remember?
Yeah, and I think that there's so many like ethical issues I feel like
Yeah.
come up
Yeah.
along with something like this as well, because everybody sort of has an agenda, everybody sort of has a motive. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a bad motive, but everybody always has some kind of agenda or a bias that they're trying to put forth, or a point of view really in wanting to tell a story.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about the ethics behind that? Like, how do we decide? Who gets to decide? How do we help people discern the difference between them?
Yeah, let me give you also an example. So in the one of the presentation session, one student was showing a map. This was after the viral map session. So the student was showing a map. It was showing kind of illegal immigration data on a map. And then we were criticizing, asking, okay, is it really, really that big difference between countries in Europe? And then the student answered, okay, well, yeah, I didn't see that much difference, so I decided to intensify the colors a bit to make it more clear, the differences. And I was like, whoa. And I really saw a kind of moment in the eyes of students. They really super well realized that, okay, well, this is how it happens. So, even if the person doesn't have any bad intentions or anything, but it's just to, intensify this story, like tell a better story. So even without any bad will or anything, it just happens because people want to tell stories. So there is a lot of ethics there, and I would say that this is exactly the big motivation for us to learn these things, because if we don't learn, then we take everything as granted, right? So we don't think about things critically, and also perhaps we cannot teach others how to how to look at the ethics side as well, right?
Yeah. And I really believe that like it's really through the creation or the learning by doing. Like you were talking earlier, there's different ways to learn things. I really believe that like when you learn, when you're doing something, you're creating something, you have those aha moments, like the ones that you just described your students having, What would you say to somebody who maybe is afraid of data or afraid of not being able to put together a story in the quote unquote right way, as they see advertised to them. What would you say is a great starting place for somebody who maybe is not as confident in their ability to tell stories?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think the key question is what is happening? When is it happening? Where is it happening? Like really looking at this, and first perhaps taking some interesting observations, some data. To really start, like looking at, okay, what are you interested in? This is one of my first questions to students. Quite often they say, well, I don't know what I should do and how should I do it. But then when we start, like, what are you interested in? What is the thing that you want to understand yourself? It can be about environment, about like is this phenomenon related to this phenomenon? It can be something that is truly interesting them. It can be football. It can be basically anything to start with, or music. And then the next thing is to start looking at some data, and then simply using very simple visualizations, like let's put all this data to timeline or to maps or to different kind of networks, like histograms. Anything that can start giving you some clue about where to look at. And then all the time asking, like, what is happening? When does it happen? Is there some change over time, right, in the data? Is there some, something that kind of gives you a hint that, okay, where is this story and what kind of story can you tell about it? And then one nice practice is really to show all these visualizations to others, and then have like 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to tell a story with these visualizations, right? And then they're like, okay, well, I don't know what is going on here. Well, perhaps we can see some things like it seems that this drink has been bought more than this one. And then somebody asks, is there? How about last year? Yeah, I didn't actually realize. Last year it was the other way. Actually, that's a good point. So there's a story in everything. Also, when you start putting more data, more observations, then you might be able to make a better story. And I would say the best story is something that happens really somewhere at some point, and it's something is actually happening. But we can say what is happening, what is changing.
Absolutely. Do you feel like people interpret information better when things are visual?
They interpret them faster.
Okay.
Faster, yeah. So it's like, look at our history. we are so used to go around in the jungle or in the forest and look for movement. Because that's how our ancestors survived.
Right.
So we see movement. We see also things that are not the same as yesterday. So we see the change. So not movement just in that like short period of time, but also movement kind of over a longer time. So that's something that we understand. We also understand stories. We also create stories. We see a lion there. We create a story. That's the same lion as yesterday, but it's a different place. Whoa. So I should really think like where to go next. So this is the key. Obviously, of course, text is visuals as well. So it's a way, of course, to store what we have been seeing and all these stories to our descendants. But visuals are very, very, very powerful.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think, listening to you speak also makes me realize that going through this process and being more aware of the stories that we're not just the ones we're telling others, but the stories we tell ourselves as well about our own self-confidence, our own, motivations to do certain things, our own abilities to do certain things.
yeah.
I wonder, do you feel like this process could help people become more self-aware about,
Yeah,
wow, this is a story I'm
absolutely.
telling myself because this is something I saw and I made this association here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's lot of movement towards kind of tracking your all your. I mean, you are running somewhere and tracking like how you are performing, and being able to analyze all this data or what did you do and really create a story that is based on some actual observations, some I mean real observations. I think it would really help we to understand ourselves also,
Yeah.
learn how we are. So, and this is of course important if you want to change something. Let's say we think that okay, we are thinking very sustainably, right? But what if we look at our data and then we look like how do we shop and what if we get like the actual story behind the. So I mean, does this make perhaps us to change our behavior
Yeah,
more or compared to us telling ourselves like a verse story, like
absolutely.
some story that doesn't is not
Yeah.
based on actual observations.
Absolutely. And I think today, especially today, when people are looking to create lives that have more purpose and they're trying to create different career paths and you're trying to be more creative, I think being able
Yeah,
to understand those different data points and those different stories that either you're hearing from somebody else that you subconsciously may have got from an environment,
yeah,
aware or not aware that you received that information is so, so, so important. That's a
yeah,
great connection I just made right now hearing you
yeah.
talk about
No,
that.
I really like your question and topic because it came to make me think about also challenges that we are facing.
Right.
So I mean, quite often people think of challenges as problems. I mean, like bigger problems that you cannot really solve. But how about thinking them from the story point of view? I mean, in all better stories, there are some challenges. I
Yeah.
mean, think about a book or a movie where the people didn't have any challenges
Right.
whatsoever. I mean,
A boring story.
super boring, right? Exactly. So, I mean, if I think about my story of my studies, I mean, I felt that it was kind of a challenge that the computer science was so boring. And when I started to study film theory and theoretical philosophy, many of my students and professors said that, okay, Tom, you're absolutely crazy. Nobody does that. you know, I mean, there is no use of philosophy or film theory whatsoever because you are a computer scientist. So they were trying to create an identity. I mean, me to create an identity that I didn't want to create.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
So I thought it was super challenging because I had to all the time uh, share like my motivation why I'm doing it. And of course, while doing it, I realized that I'm creating all the time a better story of like how things connect to each other, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people talk so much about. I think a lot of times kids and people, you need to be more resilient. You need to have grit.
yeah,
You need to be all of these things, but nobody really ever teaches you. Okay, but how? Right? What are the small steps that I take to actually build that skill set? And I think this idea of storytelling as a way of being able to become more self aware so that you can see challenges as exciting points in your story,
yeah,
that
yeah,
you then becomes more interesting versus
yeah.
overwhelming or depressing. And so I think that can be a really great way to help people maybe reframe some of those ways of thinking.
Yeah, excellent point, excellent point. And also, I also think like, well, how do you learn? Well, if not through challenges, then how? I mean,
Right.
you don't really understand something like, okay, well, why is this so? Perhaps you have to, or it's an opportunity to learn, right? So
Absolutely.
think of challenges as more like opportunities rather than just challenges.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that idea of thinking of challenges as opportunities. So thinking of speaking of challenges, some of the greatest challenges I feel like that we have today, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's climate change, whether it's immigration is a big one. a lot of them, I feel like people have a really hard time contextualizing. People have a really hard
Yeah,
time understanding, especially climate change. If
yeah,
it's not directly affecting you in that moment, people have a hard time understanding why they should be advocating for certain policies
yeah.
and so whatnot. What role do you see information visualization playing in helping people address some of these broader global challenges that may
Yeah.
affect me in the moment, but may affect me 10 years from now, but I still should be proactive?
Yeah, yeah. So, like we were talking about data as observations. So we have a lot of observations about temperature, for example. We have also a lot of observations of like how different countries are um, creating emissions. I mean, carbon dioxide emissions. Um, so, and then we are talking about storytelling. So I truly believe that that it would help, or it will help, or it already helps, perhaps, to take all this data together and then find ways to create stories that make sense, where also people can relate themselves, their own actions to that story. They can see that, oh yeah, okay, I didn't know that it's like double amount of carbon dioxide emissions I kind of create with my actions if I eat meat, right?
Right.
So kind of seeing their part in the story, and then also seeing different countries developing from not creating any emissions. I mean, almost no emissions at
Right.
all, to through car driving, meat eating. Look at China, for example. It's been a tremendous path, and it's all via storytelling. I have to say. I mean, there is fantastic. Hans Rosling, Capminder. He created a very nice way to visualize. I think he's one of these famous visualizations, Health and Wealth of Nations. I'll
Okay.
share you the
Okay,
link.
perfect. Yeah.
So you can clearly see how the countries are moving over time. There is the life expectancy, and then also the GDP, how much money they make.
Okay.
So you can clearly see how countries are moving. Some countries, of course, more towards the right upper corner.
Right.
So people live longer, and then also on average they make more money.
Wow. Okay.
So, and one of my students did for the class visualization of looking at similarly of countries, and then how much they are emitting, and then also how much they are, what is their GDP. And
Okay.
it's interesting to see the path, basically.
Right.
I mean, think about path. It's also really, really nice metaphor.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because you walk in the forest and then you see, okay, well, look at this path. This must be made by some animal or by competing tribe.
Right.
So it's all these metaphors that we can also use in the visualizations.
Right.
And I would say bringing more these metaphors that we already understand to people would greatly support them to understand. Okay, well, they are on this track. I mean,
Right.
do they want to keep on this track and kind of see that, okay, well, ice is melting here and there, so and that is causing this and these problems, really storifying all the actions. I mean, longer answer,
Yeah, no,
but
absolutely. No, I like it. Like I said, I've never really heard anyone articulate this idea as well as, you have. So I really appreciate you taking the time to expand. I wanted to ask you, when people think about artificial intelligence and like the kinds of work that machines will be doing, but the kinds of skills that humans will need, where do you see information visualization falling on that spectrum?
yeah. So AI obviously is being used to automate quite a few of our things. The interesting question is whether it should be automating thinking, learning. I mean, should we give all the learning to machines? So let's think about spatial information. Do we let AI to learn about everything, all the navigations and everything, and we don't learn that at all? Or do we still want to visualize what is going on and also kind of navigate ourselves through the different paths or stories? I mean, it can be also in an urban environment and so on. So I believe that visualization plays a huge role there. Also, if you look at AI, so perhaps, I mean, there is these estimations that we don't have to work anymore that much. Of course, that promise has been around for quite some time. Also, look at the industrial automation. So, but if it's true, so what if we have more time to, be with stories, trying to understand what is going on and make decisions of what the AI is doing. If we don't do it, if we don't ourselves try to understand what is going on, machine will do it.
Right.
Look at all these recommendation systems. I mean, it's actually our valuable time. Look at some, video sharing platform you go to. It's giving you some recommendations what to look.
Right.
So, and then it's based on data. So they show certain kind of, recommendations, and they don't show it by accident because they have evidence that if they show this one here, people will look at it. They will actually spend 10 minutes of their time to look at it. So, what if we don't ask AI to visualize the decisions? Like, okay, now you want me to look at this video. Why? Why are you doing it? I mean, do you want me to spend like 10 minutes of time with something else on looking at that video? Or, what is going on, right? Communicate, visualize, why are you doing it? I want to see this data. What kind of data have you, what kind of observations have you made about myself?
Right.
I want to see it. I don't want to see just the raw data. I want to see a visual story and where do I fit there? How does watching this video help sustainability? Because it's using a lot of energy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really important point when we talk about like, are you a passive consumer or an active consumer? I
yeah,
think when you
yeah,
have so much information coming at you from every angle and it's so tailored to your needs and to what it is you like already, and it knows that about you, you have to be, again, it goes back to that self-awareness for me, that really understanding this is why this is happening in this time, in this space, and what consciously making a decision about what you want that
yeah,
choice to be.
yeah. And think about visualizations in a way that I'm using them with my students a lot. So to find out where we should look at when building some AI. So let me give you an example. Let's say we want to create a course recommendation system, which we actually created last spring.
Okay.
So with my AI student, so the best students can choose who to work with, and our best AI student chose me, which I was so
Oh.
yeah. So actually, the department had to pay her as well for the work, so I didn't have to find out the fund.
Okay.
It's very nice. But how we started it, we gathered a lot of data, and then we visualized it, and then tried to see, okay, if we want to create an AI, what kind of AI do we want to build? So, because you can think of like, okay, let's create a recommendation engine that is always recommending similar kind of courses. And but what is the point of that? By visualization, you might see that, okay, they are, there are clusters of different courses, by colors, for example, by space, like how to organize them in a space. And then when creating the AI, you can decide that, okay, we want to create an AI that is creating a nice kind of very interdisciplinary set of recommendations, rather than always recommending similar kind of things. How typically recommendation engines are working, they are always recommending only similar kind of stuff.
Right.
So you look at those videos, whatever is those videos, and then next day you get those videos again.
Right.
Right. So, but I truly believe that when you create a visualization and then you create a story, like what kind of story I want to tell here with this visualization, that might also help you to understand what kind of AI do you want to build so that people will use their valuable time with that AI. And,
Absolutely.
It's a lot of values as well.
Yeah, and you know, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned this idea of values because if there was one thing that I took back from our trip to Finland, it was the
Yeah.
idea that it is such a value-driven culture, you know, and people talk so much about like, you know, the Simon Sinek's, the start with why, like that idea is just so popular, but I don't think I've ever been in a place where you felt the values, whether it was the government, whether it was the public library, whether it was an elementary school, secondary school, university, startup company. It didn't matter where you were. Those values were really, really kind of believed in by everyone.
Mm. Hey, your LinkedIn article was fantastic.
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
yeah, I think I learned a lot about Finland by just reading them. So
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed my trip there. I have lots more to write, but I was taking time to really reflect and kind of get all of that out. But speaking of this idea of having a value driven society, or even just this work that you're doing with your students and the kinds of things you're teaching them, reminds me of the name of your podcast, Cloud Reachers. Tell
yeah,
us a little bit about that name and about the podcast.
yeah. So like 1 year ago, summertime. I mean, 1.5 years ago already. I heard this sentence quite often in Aalto. So the sentence goes like this. So, oh, nobody's doing podcast here in Aalto, and look at other universities. Many, academics are doing a podcast about education, about research, and so on. It's like, okay, wow, okay, now next week we start doing a podcast. So I'm not a big fan of like complaining and blaming and this kind of. I'm a big fan of like looking at opportunities and then doing things. I mean, doing like next day or immediately. So then I teamed up with Mika Lehtonen, our business school teacher, who is now in Dubai, moved to Dubai in August to teach there in design school, and decided that, okay, well, let's do a podcast season 1, 10 episodes. Let's do it as a proper media production. I mean, I've done some media before as well, so it's not a big deal. So I made it like a checklist, okay, what to do, visuals, and like the concept and so on. Then I was thinking about the name. I was really thinking, okay, yeah, well, something that doesn't exist. Well, how do you create something that doesn't exist? Well, it's kind of I mean, it's kind of interesting because I was thinking, okay, well, we want to talk about dreams, about future, about online. Then I was thinking about, okay, what are the metaphors out there? Well, cloud. I was thinking at the sky. I was like, okay, well, cloud. I mean, it's kind of reaching, out something that is not really reachable, but you are still doing it. You are creating these ladders and, to reach out the clouds. It was okay, cloud reacher. Then I was Googling like, okay, is this even a word? So it seems that nobody was using it. .com address was also free.
Oh, wow.
I found like, was it the student group or something like that in UK was using it like Cloud Reachers or something like that. But that was the only one I found. And then I quickly registered the address and then asked my assistant to create the visuals, and which she did fantastically. And then we started recording.
That is fantastic. Okay, so I have like you just reminded me of one more question. So your name Cloud Reachers and just the way you talk about creating the podcast, and you said this a little bit earlier. I forget exactly what you said, but this idea, if you're going to do something, do it quickly. And I remember during your presentation, and that was the number one question I asked you after, was like, how are you able to move so fast through all of these different things that you're creating? Because that idea of learning from failure, I think, has such a different connotation. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, completely fall flat on your face, right? It
No.
really, I think, I think what you're doing is so exemplary of the idea of learning from failure. Can you talk a little bit about your belief of iteration and moving quickly and why that's so important?
Yeah, well, it's kind of because I really believe that it's not healthy to be in the complaining or blaming mode, like to think that everything is impossible. I don't think that is healthy for
Right.
one person or for the
Oh,
organization. I
absolutely.
think it's super unhealthy. So what is the alternative? Alternative is to look at these challenges as opportunities. Look at, okay, let's look. I mean, nobody's doing it. How about I do it? I mean, how about I just do it? So how to do it? Well, how about teaming up? How about saying that, okay, well, I don't do anything alone, which is true. I mean, I do nothing alone. So I always want to team up also with Mika, my co-host. So he was saying first that, okay, yeah, I'm supporting you, but do it yourself. I mean, you are the host, right? And I said, no, it's not okay. I mean, I want to have like a democratic system where we are co-hosts. No, like two co-hosts. And then let's have always interesting guests. So not like monotonous podcast, which some people, of course, doing. So always interesting
Right.
conversation. And, let's just do it. Let's record like next week our first session, which we did with Mika. So I talked to people. I said that, okay, we have this idea. And then I found one studio that we are using for actually movies. So movies come there, they rent that studio in our university
Okay.
and make sounds essentially. So you see, for example, in a movie, when you hear somebody's walking, I mean, it's not really him or her walking,
Okay.
but it's made in a studio. So some professional is walking at the same time.
Okay.
So we went to this kind of studio, and then we did the first recording, and then we started to gather guests. Just sending emails. In Twitter, I volunteered to listen to audiobook by Laura Kalbach from Ireland.
Okay.
She had made an audiobook on accessibility, and she was asking for volunteers. I volunteered, and then I gave feedback about the audiobook, and then she appreciated it. And then I said, hey, by the way, we are starting this podcast. How about making an episode on accessibility, which we did. So kind of always looking at this, chances of kind of bringing anything that you do otherwise well, like to your new creation.
Right.
It doesn't yet kind of exist. I mean, it didn't exist.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I love, so like, and I think the advice really is in the story. You break down that you just start with that step one and it just evolves to step two and step three and step four, but you have to take that first step.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about this idea between cooperation versus competitiveness.
Yeah.
What is a piece of advice you would give to somebody who is having a hard time making that mindset shift? Because, traditional school, the way most people have gone through, teaches you that really only a few people can be the winners. That there really are, like, we don't live in a world of co-hosts. That's not what this, the system sort of teaches you. But to really be successful, you have to adopt that mindset. What is a piece of advice you would give to somebody who struggles with understanding that?
Many things create distance between people, and money is one thing. I mean, Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, the Nobel Prize winner for economics, has an interesting example where he had kind of one setting, like a room, and asked people to organize two chairs to have a chat. He had only one difference between the groups. So in one setting, he had a screensaver in a monitor in the corner of the room, where he had this flying money screensaver. And for the other group, it was just black.
Okay.
So those who had the black screen, they had the chairs, I think, on average in 80 centimeter distance. and those with the money, they had 1 meter 20 centimeters distance. I mean, for the chairs.
Okay.
I don't know what is that in US units, but anyway, it's a considerable change. So the problem of money is that it's really creating distance and competitiveness. So, for example, in Aalto Online Learning, what I started to do when we started, I didn't ask for funding or funded proposal applications. I asked it for idea proposals.
Okay.
So my big advice would be to instead of bringing money to the discussion or different point systems and different kind of where it's like competitive scales, instead ask for ideas, and then like looking at how these ideas can be perhaps combined. I mean,
right.
how to collaborate around ideas. And then, of course, you need money as well at some point. You need all this other stuff. But then kind of bring the money only after there is a collaboration.
Absolutely. So start with the idea generation first and then collaboration
exactly.
around ideas.
Exactly.
And then...
exactly. Because, I mean, look at the... I mean, in I'm sure it's the same in US, but in EU we have funding for universities, and I mean, people are competing for them like crazy, and then only so few can actually get it, and everybody else get the rejection.
Right.
So why don't we? I know that it's impossible to fund everything, but I mean, why don't we kind of look more for ideas and this
Absolutely.
Kind of
yeah.
Because, sometimes the true value is not really to get that funding or the first place. It is to be able to share that your dream or your idea with the other person.
Absolutely. And really make an impact, right? So that your idea touches more and more people. Oh, wow. What a fantastic conversation. To wrap up, I would love to have you share, if you were a student today, what are some of the things you would be doing or focusing on?
I would look at I mean, there is these 4 C's. I mean, critical thinking, communication, creativity, and communication, creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. Yeah, of course. So, and I would really look at them, and then when I'm kind of creating my study path, I would very widely look at different courses around the university to kind of help me to learn these 4 C's, plus perhaps empathy and understanding of AI, understanding of storytelling, and so on. So I wouldn't really still believe in like one ready-made curriculum, but I would think of life and study life as an opportunity to create my own personal story, or perhaps with another person or a group of people, that's so I would actually do the same as I did back.
Same as you did. Yeah, you were ahead of your time. That's fantastic. Anything you would like to share about where people can find you and where people can learn more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I have the podcast Cloud Bridges. Then I have also recorded this information visualization podcasts that I'm using in my course here and also now in Germany. Then, of course, by email, by Twitter. I have the Legal Science account. I have Twitter account, Legal Science, and then also just by this kind of conversation. So I'm going to quite a few places. I'm going to Bergen again to Visual Pedagogy conference to give a keynote next summer, and also I was invited to Leibniz just recently. And so I go to places, and also I have done also some invited talks and keynotes by this kind of Zoom or Skype way. So this is also an option. So, and I've been also guest in different podcasts as well. What was the recent one? Yeah, in KTH, they have a podcast, so I was guest there talking about information visualization. I can share that podcast as well.
That would be great. Share all those links, and then I will link them in the show notes so that everybody can find you and they can learn more, because I think the way you talk about information visualization and articulate that idea is just very clear and very easy to understand, and definitely something that we need to be talking about more. So thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks, Saba. This was a true pleasure, and it was nice to meet you now, and of course back then in Design Factory. Looking forward to the next opportunity to meet here or there, or
or anywhere in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Of all the places I visited to learn about how countries are thinking and responding to change, our trip to Helsinki in Finland will forever remain one of the most memorable and inspirational. If you want to learn more about my experience there, you can head to my Instagram and check out some of the highlights, or you can head to my blog at askmissq.com, and I've written a couple of articles about our experience and the different visits that we did while there. As someone who believes in the power of design and empathy, it was just really incredible to see what the possibilities are when you don't just practice this as an individual or as a business, but you really begin to practice design and empathy as a country. Everything about Finland was so human-centered, and it was just really evident that above all else, they really valued the interests and just the happiness of their people. So it's really no surprise when year after year, they're constantly ranked as the #1 happiest country in the world. For the Finnish, what really made them unique in being able to, I think, achieve this was that for them, every single challenge was phrased not as so much of a business question, but more of a human question. And this really ultimately is the beauty of design, in that we begin with people at the center and that we begin with empathy. An understanding of just their needs and their challenges and their motivations. And when you begin to do this and you really begin to start having some of those conversations with people, that's really when those missing pieces start to emerge. I've always, kind of said and learned over the years that when you begin with empathy, a lot of what you think is really challenged by what you learn. And that in turn really informs the design of the solutions and products or experiences that you're trying to bring to people. I can't wait to hear what you guys think, so go ahead and share with us your questions and your thoughts. I'll drop both of our handles in the show notes so that you can find us online. And if you have a moment, we'd love if you could rate and review the show and let us know what you're thinking. Starting a project like this is never an easy task, and so I wanted to take a moment to just thank everyone who has offered their feedback, their support, and their advice along the way. I will be back again next week with another guest. Till then, have a fantastic week, everyone. It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you still have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Sprint to Success with Design Thinking community.